Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media signing blacking and shining again, asking you to hit the mother cuss word share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I finally listened to Umar Johnson's full interview with the Breakfast Club. I heard him speak to police brutality and mixing with white people. And frankly, I get all of that. But someone asked him about mixing with anyone that's not black. And frankly, I get, well, no, see, he said that's a problem. And I get some of it, but see, even now as I record this, I'm sitting in an Arab nation, the people of which I think we can do business, but cannot afford to marry. And they're closely related to us. So men understand this. Black men dating out is not a snow bunny crisis. The Latina is the black woman's biggest threat. That's not a snow bunny. And frankly, black women don't realize that they're doing this, but they're surrendering to Latinas and anyone else that will compete for a black man, even when it's someone whom I would tell black men to avoid. Dr. Tiasan Johnson said that Latina and even white women will attend his classes so they can understand their black men, while sisters don't want to understand black men, even in their own sons. You know how sisters do. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Do what I say, not as I do. But then they want us to marry them, defend them, and provide for them. Now here's the deal with Naomi Osaka. Haiti may not even have a tennis team to start with. I looked for one and I could not find any reference to a tennis team. So representing them in the Olympics may not have been an option at all. We don't have the infrastructure they do, and that's not our fault. Omar thinks that her father was a problem for marrying a Japanese woman. But the fact is that Naomi never lets anyone forget her Haitian heritage. And also, who a normal man can marry is up to women. Who a normal man can marry is limited to women in their prime that will marry them, and oftentimes gorgeous women in their prime won't marry normal men. And to women beyond the wall because, well, they'll accept a marriage proposal because they're beyond the wall. Even if they bring that wall to themselves prematurely by premature weight gain. Or if it's even just bad luck that will bring it to them, like a disfiguring car accident. Well, yeah, of course you can marry a woman like that. But you give a chick 3 options and most men can't marry her. A cute chick in her prime will not accept many men's proposals. Omar said himself that frankly women don't marry down financially. Okay, they don't. That's true. Omar never attacked that. That means he accepts the hypergamy. But I have not heard him really go in on their feminism. And I'm sure he has I'm sure he's addressed the feminism, but you see, that has to be attacked like a false religion. Because that does more to drive men and women apart than her weave. He said that black women don't marry and date outside of the race nearly as often as black men do. Well, that's true. But see, Dr. Umar knows enough history to know that white men raped black women throughout the Americas, and black men did not do the same thing to white women. Think of how scared a black man would be if he had ever raped a white woman in all of his life. So he pretends to be unaware of this. I say pretends. Maybe he forgets. But at the end, it comes down to this. Black men didn't touch white women until they were told they'd be lynched if they didn't do so. Even later, black men didn't touch white women till white women started approaching black men, coming on to black men, flirting with black men, while black women wouldn't do it. It took a white woman in the beginning to tell a black man that she'd scream if he didn't for a black man to touch one. We know what would happen if she got caught with him, let's say. If she got caught with him, even after saying, I'm going to scream if you run or you don't do it, they get caught, she still screams. It's a rape charge no matter what. Once a white woman got caught with a black man, it was a rape charge, and a rape charge was a lynching. Dr. Johnson is still holding black swirlers accountable, but not accountable enough, meaning the black women swirlers. You see, black women don't date out and marry out nearly as often because other men don't prefer them over other women in most cases. Frankly, black women are preferred by black men and not other men much, but we know that these same non-black men don't have to be so macho and stereotypical, so penitentiary-headed and bound to get the same black woman. A black man can only impress by being so intimidating to other men that he could probably be put in the penitentiary even on a false accusation. Dr. Umar sounds completely unaware of all this, of what we know about sisters lately. When white guys go into the chat rooms and tell, or they go into the live stream panels and they're in the chat and they're telling us they're knocking down these same pro-black sisters, these men could be anyone. Anyone could say anything in the chat. But they don't talk like brothers. They don't write like brothers. And what they're saying is they're knocking down these same pro-black sisters that get up and make speeches and preach to us and act like they're out of our leagues, unless, of course, they're single moms with bad jobs. Then they act like we're not stepping up to the plate to take care of them and their kids by other men. They don't have to marry these same women while you or I would have to marry them and take on the other guy's kids. See, Dr. Umar may not be aware that these white guys are saying this because he's so busy traveling and speaking. Okay, fine. Still, at this point, we have to be aware that, frankly, most men of any race don't have the say-so in forming couples. Do you know when that changes? When they're not black and she is. Then they can have the choice. But that's not what they want. We get to decide to not be with someone, but we don't get to decide if we'll be with someone unless she's ruined somehow in the eyes of other men. And that's how that black woman is. She's still ain't making it easy for brothers. See, the sister sees that other men are not as attracted to her. But because the black man does find her attractive, she then looks down on the black man even more. Unless, of course, he's a swaggerilla. We just have more options than sisters do. And frankly, sisters are still highly willing to not only date out and marry out, but also to cheaply and easily sleep with these same non-black men whom they stereotype as being less masculine than us. I know because I'm a black man, they saw as being the worst of a black nerd and the worst of a white guy, rolled into one and the best of neither. And there were other men they saw very similarly. You see, when you had to put bass in your voice to say something for them to listen, I had to sound like a werewolf or a lion when I spoke to get the same respect. And it probably still didn't work. I see the same sisters online saying that white men are so much better. Not even other men of color, but specifically white men. The same white men they said we literate black boys in childhood were too much of are now so much better. They're not marrying them in large numbers because they can't. They're not dating them much because they can't. When they're not screwing them, it's often because they can't even get that guy into their beds. There's a whole black manosphere full of red pill-aware black men exactly because black women aren't being race loyal. I say what Edward Anderson said, Dr. Umar. Tell sisters to try and date and marry out as much as black men are doing. Tell them to give it their best shot. Two things will become very obvious at that point, Dr. Johnson. The first thing we will see proven is that black men are noticeably more open to other women of color than black women are to other men of color. And she's fit, feminine, submissive, and attractive, and let's say equally as childless as we are, we'll take the Indonesian. We'll take the Filipina. We'll take the Latina, the Afro-Latina oftentimes. We'll take them before we'll take that Becky. Can we say the same in reverse? No. That's the first thing. The second thing is that non-black men, white or not, are less open to black women than any other woman on the planet on average. So in other words, that Latin American man will marry the Indonesian or the Filipina before he'll marry the sister. Don't get me started on the Arab man. The Arab man, generally speaking, will oftentimes consider marriage, usually to the Arab woman first. Maybe that white woman, if she's Muslim, then she has a leg up over the Arab woman, unless he's a Christian as well. Then, of course, it's white woman, then Arab anyway. You see where I'm going with this? You see where I'm going with this? In a nutshell, what I'm saying is that these other non-black men will marry another non-black woman that's not from the same race as them long before they will marry that black woman. And oftentimes, it ain't got to do with the attitude. It ain't just they got a problem with the Nigerian woman's attitude or the Ado sister's attitude. That ain't even it a lot of times. It is because she's black with wide nose and big lips and 4C hair and dark skin. Matter of fact, not and, but or. One of these things will set these men off. That's it. It's a saying, but you'll see this. What Edward Anderson says will show what I have said and what we've already seen. The black women push black men into the arms of other women that like us and then wind up by themselves. The low rates of black women marrying at all aren't because of black men marrying out. Most black men don't even marry or date out. And then it's the other woman of color, as I just said, long before it's that Becky. The ones who will do so, though, well, they'll do it because of the reason that black women will be alone, which is because they push. Women get to use nebulous and ambiguous language all the time when talking to men or about men they want. Ask that dumb broad to define spirit, energy, and game. You already know that she won't give solid definitions for these words. You start cornering her about the definitions, she'll start talking with her hands and using sounds that are even not words, and they're more nebulous than the words that you ask her to define. So this is what the Western woman does, and the Western black women are worse about this than the white chicks have ever been, but each of them are terrible to their own men. So if the most liberated women in the world can't really define what they want in men, then they don't deserve men, and they should be unapproached, unpursued, and unmarried. They shouldn't even be able to catch a ding-a-ling, but many men hearing this would say, well, that's unrealistic to expect us to make sex as hard for them as they've made it for us. We won't agree on that. But Dr. Umar, you were correct about the problems with snow bunnies. And by extension, I can tell you the issues are the same with the non-black Arab women, the non-black Latina, the Persian women, the Afghan women, and the Indian and Pakistani women. Matter of fact, the non-black Latina might be the best out of all the ones I mentioned. The others can't seem to bring themselves to delegitimize white supremacy and white hegemony. This pro-whiteness is a problem, and this is what makes them problematic. But how could you ignore the fact that there's some groups out there that aren't our enemies? How could you write off any unions between us and them that aren't a threat to the blackness of any resulting children? Black Indonesians aren't ashamed of being black. This is because their Indonesian moms didn't teach them shame. Indonesian women don't hate black people, so they don't call the cops on us. Malaysians don't. Filipinos don't. Filipinas, I should say, I'm sorry. They're more likely to use a white dude for his money and then spend that on a black man somewhere. Best way to get to a white dude's money, get in his pockets, is probably through a Southeast tropical Asian woman. While we already know that the Karen and the Becky and the Amber, as you say, will only marry a black man if he has a lot of money. I know that. That's true. I remember the statistics. I forgot, but I think a Hispanic man that's not black has to have 2 or 4 times as much as they would demand of a white, the same woman would demand of a white dude, and the brother's got to have 8 times. So I get that when you talk about Becky and Karen and Amber. But brothers dating out is not usually that snow bunny crisis anyway, as I said. See, but the thing is this, sisters in the West are getting to be the same way. Black man's got to be a swaggerilla and he's got to be more paid. Well, if you're a white business owner and you get job applications from different black men, are you going to call back the swaggerilla for an interview? Or are you going to call the one that acts and talks the most like you're stereotyped to talk and act? If you call them for an interview to see which ones they are, you're not going to hire the swaggerilla. So he's going to get paid less throughout his life in many cases. Yet sisters demanding that he be the CEO in the boardroom and then be the kingpin in the streets. Look, there's more to this, man. Did you not hear what JT said, Dr. Omar? Hell, sisters can be fat, single moms, broke, uneducated, illiterate, inarticulate, look like men, and still demand that you be in shape and rich at the same time, doctor. And even then, if you meet all standards, except that you're just older than what they want, they'll take you anyway, take all the things you do check off the boxes for, and then cheat on you with a younger man, with your money. Becky, if you catch her cheating on you, she'll at least try to hide it. But a sister you catch cheating on you, and she'll tell you right off the bat she owns you and she's entitled to it. Jada outright flexed her power to consent or not in the same interview in which she called her adultery an entanglement and then tried to talk Will out of getting back at her. This is the reason that that's just the Western black woman at this point. A disgrace to the ones that are not even like that. And vastly outnumbering them either by voice or by sheer numbers. And the Anglophone Caribbean woman, and soon to be the African woman back on the continent, is going to be the same way. In some major cities of the continent, they already are. So avoiding that Becky that taught this to Sapphire and the other women who idolize the Becky that are busy doing the same thing to their men as the Becky, that makes sense, and that's self-defensive. But avoiding all women that aren't black, though, even when their people aren't our enemies, and they openly prefer us over master oppressor, is the same as a vow of celibacy, and that's against our interests. It's not even necessary. Now, I've talked about necessary de facto celibacy. But to go and take an extra vow of it, ignoring those whose people are not your enemies and whose women aren't out to get you, is counterproductive, unwise, and unhealthy. And the sad thing is, you pro-blacks, of whom I used to be, don't believe in celibacy any more than we Muslims believe in it, and we don't believe in celibacy. So, anyway, Dr. Umar, you already gave up your Islam. So take my advice. Either go to Bali and get you an Indonesian Catholic woman, or come back to Islam and get you a rural Malaysian, a rural Indonesian, or a southern Filipina. If you're only in a black woman, and go back to the continent and get a rural African woman, or go to Latin America and get an Afro-Latina. Be with one, because frankly, your loyalty is not being rewarded by these pro-black women or so-called pro-black women at all, sir. If anything, they've penalized you for it, two of them by carrying both of your children to term outside of marriage when they have all these birth control options. That's just the two that carried your babies. That was a penalty, sir. I'm not saying you don't love your kids. What I'm saying is they chose to carry the term outside of marriage because that would be a penalty. They just wanted you to have to sit up and pay them for at least another 18 years, respectively, because you enjoyed yourself in between their thighs. That's all. If anything, they penalized you for it by not approaching and proposing to you and trying to spit game to you when they're attractive and at least equally childless as you, since they know who you are and what you're trying to do, if you're really trying to do it. I mean, in another context, they chase celebrities. The same ones to whom you'd have to try to really court and try to convince and all that. She's chasing a musician and an athlete if they come to town, just to bump uglies for one night. But if they can do that, how come they can't come to you and propose to start a black family with you, equally childless, while they're attractive and younger than you? They just won't. Whatever reasons they give you for why they won't do that are sad excuses in light of what I just said. So this leaves them simply viewing you as less than equal to themselves and inferior to the men they will pursue and chase down. Men who aren't race loyal and pro-black until they get a prison sentence and become cell block reform ninja preachers. Because you know how it is, the ones that are swagged out with the women, yeah, they don't become pro-black until that point. For all of your race loyalty, doctor, you should be married to two beautiful, submissive, young, fertile women who don't fight with each other and give you a headache about the polygyny, and they should have come to you. Anything less is a slap in the face to you in exchange for your race loyalty, the same loyalty I had at one point. Believe me, they will make the efforts I just talked about them making that you think are unrealistic, that other brothers listening think are unrealistic. They'll make these same efforts and more to get these Arab men out here where I live if they think they have a shot. And they'll do even more to get at Massa, the white man, that oppressed us and the Arab if they think they got a shot at the white man without the same requirements they have for us or even for the Arab. So instead of telling us to hold our testes and wait to be chosen by a fat single mom with more baby daddies and babies, allow me to tell you to go to a third world nation where they don't hate us or look down on us and live with a childless, feminine, attractive, submissive, tight vagina having brown woman and keep your nuts drained and your stomach full. Instead of you telling us to indirectly vow celibacy and then practice it, allow me to ask you why you have a problem with Islam, in which Allah promised men multiple wives and concubines in paradise with none of the headache, as a reward for the headache that they will give us here in this life, in this world, if they look like anything that could get and keep your junk hard. You know better than many of us that the women in this world have to bring some kind of grief because they're human, and that the Wicked Witch of the West is just downright unreasonable, and the black Western woman is outright hostile with all of this from jump and then demands that you love her anyway. You know that women first, then Western women second, then the Western black women third and most, will make it such that when you do pass away and face Allah, you will have earned those many wives and concubines. So why give them up in the name of ancestors whom we rightly love and miss, but who never said they were gods, never asked to be worshipped, and can do less dead now than any of us could do when we're alive? Don't tell us to hold our junk and sacrifice for some used Arby's, sandwich looking trim. Tell the black woman to go easier on good thinking black men, so-called educated lames, even the Urkels, just to make sure that they get the message. Tell them to do that. Tell them to close their legs to the stereotypical bum swaggerillas, some of whom you said yourself need to be put to sleep. Or keep screwing the bums, but just deal with the consequences and fuck the shuck up and stop asking the rest of the men to come in and feed who they were not responsible to breed. Additionally, stop acting like other men have no problems at all with their women, period. They may not have the exact same cocktails, all puns intended, of issues that sisters give us, but they do have some issues. One student of mine just told me a few minutes before I started recording that because his father's married to 3 women simultaneously, he doesn't want to go that same route in his own life because he saw the strife. And I said, okay, cool. But when you going to get married? I'm about 30. Ask why. He said, well, I need to get the house, the car, I need to save up some money. I was like, seriously, you're going to do all this work through your 20s celibately to acquire the same assets, the prices of which are always going up anyway, and then marry only one and limit your junk to that one vagina? Bruh, if you have to have all your ducks in a row before you get married, why can't she share you? Straight up. The reward for that should be a little bit of diversity, even if it's only 2. And she doesn't say a feather-mucking thing about it, nor does the second one. If you want to do this with no headache, then you make the first one think she's the second one. That's what you do. Then you can marry the second one with no headache. She don't know the difference. She thought you already married to the second one. But you do not limit yourself because they are going to bring you headache. You don't limit yourself to one vagina. The minute one of them starts tripping, bye-bye. You fit the guck out of my house, go back to your father's house. Even here, they're willing to tolerate a little bit too much in exchange for all the good they not only are willing to do for their women, but feel obliged to do. So I had to red pill this man right quick, and he got exactly what I was getting at too. He understood. They face issues with their women, but then they turn and refuse to let these women run them into the ground. Even when they're being too nice, there's a standard, a limit they have that we don't. And when they get married, with or without wealth, he calls the shots independently of their standard of living because, and that's the end of. So far, that's what it is. Because they just got their limits. So anyway, you know Western sisters are not only offering a bad deal to us brothers, but they're teaching non-Western women, black or not, to do the same thing. So hurry up and take my advice and get that non-Western black woman, if you really mean it, or get that Southeast tropical Asian who prefers black man. But stop telling us to wait for the incorrigible sapphire to come around. She never will, sir. Nothing's going to bring her around. They've already said it. They will not respect black men till we leave. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, black out. Black heterosexual non-select male power, just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.